bringing you the latest stories from across the globe and across Africa live from our studio. Welcome to Standpoint on Nimrod Television. I am OPEYEMI Lasisi. Now here are today's world headlines. Syria free of a dictator, learning how to govern remaining the tough challenge. Brazil's Lula rushed to Sao Paulo for brain surgery. South Korea's ex-defense minister attempts suicide as presidential office raided in martial law falls out. Arab states condemns Israel reported operations inside Syria buffer zone. NYPD commissioner calls Brian Thompson's killing a tragedy. Police arrest 3 after the Oak Flat explosions. Now the news in details. The sound of celebratory gunfire filled the streets of Damascus in the hours following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Although the jubilant scenes at the weekend that greeted the end of half a century of tyranny could not mask the scale of the challenge facing the victorious Islamist rebels whose lightning advance on the Syrian capital captured the world's attention. Those rebels, led by the group Hayat Tahrir al-Shaman (HTS), must now try to unite a country cleaved apart by more than a decade of civil war, one in which dozens of heavily armed militias and remnants of the old regime linger, and the chaos that followed in the hours after the capital's fall gave a stark reminder of the enormity of that task. It was recorded at least 28 people were killed by that celebratory gunfire, the Syrian health minister told Al Arabiya news channel. Meanwhile, civilians broke into Assad palaces, looted shops, and stole bags of cash from the central bank, prompting the rebels to declare a 13-hour curfew. By nightfall, other than the occasional stray bullet, the silence was punctuated only by the sound of airstrikes. Israel has since said it struck strategic weapon systems, residual chemical weapons capabilities, and long-ranging rockets that belonged to Assad's army. A 25-year-old lawyer and resident of an upscale Damascus neighborhood who pleaded to remain anonymous for safety reasons said that the gunfire went on for 11 hours, and as soon as it started dying down, the Israelis started their bomb escapades. The rebels had dreamt of this day for years, but even they appear to have been amazed by the speed and ease of their advance. Now their rush is to keep the lead on Syria's Pandora's box, avoid the power vacuum, and present the sort of chaos that almost inevitably arises when a 50-year regime topples in a matter of days. Now moving on to Brazil. The Brazilian president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was rushed to Sao Paulo overnight for emergency surgery to drain a bleed on his brain linked to a falling in October, and he will remain in hospital for a couple more days. It was recorded that the 79-year-old Lula is well and being monitored in the intensive care unit after the successful operation. A medical note published by the government said doctors will hold a press conference at 9 a.m. local time to provide details. The presidential spokesperson Paulo Pimenta said in a radio interview that Lula would likely remain in the ICU for another 48 hours with contact limited to his medical team, adding that he's stable, conscious, and calm. On the other hand, there have been increasing health concerns about the aging president, a standard-bearer of the Latin American left, who is halfway through his third non-consecutive term. Weak results for his Workers' Party in these year's municipal elections underscored the lack of a clear leftist successor if he chooses not to run for re-election in 2026. As Anastasia wore off early on Tuesday, Lula woke up and then went back to sleep, according to the presidential aide, while Vice President Geraldo Alckmin cancelled plans in Sao Paulo on Tuesday to return to the capital, Brasilia. His aide said where he would assume Lula's agenda, including a visit from Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, while Pimenta added that Lula may not need to formally transfer the powers of the president to Alckmin because tests in early November showed Lula's condition was stable and he remained active recently, traveling to Montevideo to discuss a Mercosur trade deal. Now moving on to South Korea. The South Korea police raided the presidential office on Wednesday as a part of a widening investigation into President Yoon Suk-yeol's stunning but short-lived declaration of martial law sparked the widespread public anger in the country. Yoon has been barred from leaving the country as prosecutors weigh possible insurrection charges and opposition lawmakers continue to seek his impeachment in what has become a stunning political showdown in South Korea over the past week. On the other hand, the former defense minister Kim was detained in the capital Seoul on Sunday, becoming the first figure detained over the case. He allegedly recommended the imposition of martial law and resigned as defense minister on Thursday. Shin Yun-ae, the Commissioner General of Korea Correctional Service, said Kim made the attempt on his life before a formal arrest warrant was issued last Tuesday. Speaking to legislators at the National Assembly, Shin said the incident took place in the bathroom. When the correction officer opened the bathroom door, Kim gave up on the attempt before he was moved to an isolation room and has no health issues. The incident comes just over a week after President Yoon declared martial art law in an unannounced television address late on December 3rd, accusing the main opposition party of sympathizing with North Korea and of anti-state activities. Dramatic scenes from the night showed security forces breaking through windows in the National Assembly to try and prevent lawmakers from gathering. Now moving on to Arab. Some Arab countries have issued official statements rejecting Israel's reported seizure of the demilitarized buffer zone with Syria in the occupied Golan Heights. The foreign ministries in Egypt, Qatar and Saudi Arabia have said the Israeli move is a violation of Syria's sovereignty, international law and the disengagement agreement signed in 1974, which Israel says has collapsed. A spokesperson for the Qatari Foreign Ministry said during a press conference on Tuesday that he considered it unacceptable for Israel to exploit the current situation in Syria. This development comes after a source quoted by Reuters said that Israeli forces were advancing towards Damascus. While an Israeli military official originally denied these claims, the Israeli Defense Forces later acknowledged that its troops could be operating beyond the demilitarized buffer zone in the Golan Heights. Although the IDF strongly denies it is advancing towards the Syrian capital, describing this as fake news. Following the Bashar al-Assad regime being toppled, Israel moved into the buffer zone with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the 1974 disengagement agreement with Syria had collapsed with the rebel takeover of the country. Moving on, the Israel Defense Forces has acknowledged for the first time that its troops are operating beyond the demilitarized buffer zone in the Golan Heights. In a briefing, the IDF international spokesperson Nadav Shoshani says Israel wanted to make clear the reality that its forces were operating in an area of separation and then a few additional points. Shoshani says when we say a few additional points, we're talking about the area of separation of the area of the buffer zone in vicinity, adding that these places are points for defense and the IDF is operating as part of a process of trying to make sure the area keeps safe and ensure stability. Although Shoshani also strenuously denies reports in some Syrian media that troops are advancing on Damascus, describing them as completely false and fake news. Now moving on to NYPD Commissioner's statement about Brian Thompson killing. Referring to some online posts that have expressed support for Luigi Mangione, the man accused of fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisk said that the killing was nothing short of a tragedy. She added that the intense investigation into the killing goes on, including the shooter's motive, recalling that when they took a look at the manifesto or three-page written down document, they will see anti-corporative sentiment, a lot of issues with the healthcare industry. But as to issues with a specific motive, that will come out as this investigation continues to unfold over the next weeks and months. Despite all the modern wizardry available to law enforcement these days, it was a simple, traditional image distributed to the media and the public that led to Luigi Mangia's arrest. However, the police released an image from surveillance footage showing a then unidentified person of interest yesterday, while one of McDonald's employees recognized him and called the police. Frank Figliuzzi, a former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI, said he is a huge fan of crowdsourcing crime solving, reminiscing way back to his FBI career when they would agonize over the decision to share information with the public, which was what broke this case. The video surveillance app added that there is an interesting contrast with the high-tech forensics and sophisticated DNA fingerprintings, scuba teams, and what solved this. Just putting out a photo of the guy, he added. Now moving on to the Hague flat explosions. The authorities in the Netherlands have arrested 3 suspects in connection with the devastating explosions that rocked an apartment block in The Hague, killing 6 people and leaving the community in shock. The blast, which occurred at 6:15 local time on Saturday, demolished 5 homes in the Takwe camp area of the city, where police are exploring all avenues that could have led to the incident, with the arrest suggesting a potential criminal motive. The suspects had been held in restrictive custody, only allowed contact with their lawyers, and are expected to appear in court later this week, while further arrests cannot be ruled out. Recalling, it said on Saturday night they met local people trudging around in the rain between fire trucks and police vans. The quiet neighborhood has been shaken by the loss of 6 people and the uncertainty surrounding the nature of and possible reason behind the blast, emphasizing that among the victims were 3 members of the same family, a 45-year-old father, his partner 41, and a 17-year-old daughter. Their 8-year-old son miraculously survived, and the 3 other men aged 31, 44, and 63 were also killed. Among them was a civil engineer from Greece who was reportedly in love with the Netherlands. 4 others were rescued from the rubble of their former homes. Several vehicles have been seized, though it's unclear if any had the car seen speeding away from the scene shortly after the explosion. Furthermore, police have received dozens of tips of an appealing for more witnesses and images from pet cameras and dash cams. The forensic teams are poised to resume their investigation once the crime scene is deemed safe. The explosion impact has extended beyond the immediate casualties. 4 people were hospitalized, including 2 who had been sleeping in the basement of a bar at the time and were treated for smoke inhalation. A bridal store next door to the bar was completely destroyed, while other ground floor bars were in stock remarkably remained intact. An art studio was also totally decimated. Many residents were evacuated and remain in shelters while structural damage is accessed. And so now, before I go, here is a recap of everything I told you today on Standpoint. I told you about Syria free of its dictator, learning how to govern remaining the tough challenge. And then I went to Brazil. Lula's rushed to Sao Paulo for brain surgery. And then I moved to South Korea. Ex-defense minister attempting suicide as presidential office raided in martial law falls out. And then I moved on to Arab states. Condemning Israel reported operations inside Syria buffer zone. Then NYPD commissioner's comment concerning Brian Thompson killing, calling it a tragedy. And then I moved on to police arresting 3 after the Hague flat explosions. And that's all the time I have for you here on Standpoint at Nimrod Television. I am OPEYEMI Lasisi. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time. Thank you.